Hello, welcome to episode 23 of the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum, where we'll discuss all matters relating to the challenges and the opportunities of live streaming worship services and other events. Whether you're considering one-way broadcast or an interactively engaging worship, the most important thing to keep in mind is your congregation's experience, because while they may come for the community, the message, or the music, you have to engage them so that they stick around long enough to hear it. So whether you're with us live or playing this back at a later time, welcome. If you're here for the first time, this will be a rather unusual episode. Experimental, if you will, so just know that any other episode would go a little bit differently. If you're with us live on Zoom or YouTube, you can contribute to the show with questions and comments and answers to our poll questions today on our Discord. There's a category named Live Show with channels under it that are named appropriately. Now, we don't look at Zoom's chat feature or YouTube's chat feature during the show, except you'll find a link in the Zoom chat to join our Discord if you're not already signed up. If you want to invite other people to the show, you can find the Zoom and Discord registration information on our Facebook page, where we'll also post upcoming episodes. If you're with us live on Zoom, you can stick around after we're done and participate in the post-show where we'll have casual conversation with open microphones. Now, we are a growing and international multi-faith community representing congregations of all sizes and faiths. For the topics that we discuss here, religious denomination is pretty transparent. We all want to communicate with our communities and do it as effectively as we can, and we are here to help each other up our game. So, and we are just one in a related set of communities that our panelists and I contribute to, dedicated to all flavors of media production. So if you're hungry for more, look for links in our Discord under related shows. And there's more. Media production, even for church, is a rich and deep area of interest and study. And you can learn one way of doing things, or you can learn multiple ways. And when you do that, this offers you creative opportunities to improve your results, enrich your personal satisfaction, and make your work more interesting. So we have multiple training programs for you. Audio training with Mark Plukas on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time is working on skill development for mixing, for listening, and for editing. And Joanna Lovell does Audacity training on Tuesdays. Look for information on the Discord. Now, also for next season, I'm working on plans to offer deeper workshops on audio and on creative video switching and camera technique, as well as on-camera presence and other skills. So check out the training and announcements channel on our Discord. And it's these interactive engagement opportunities on Discord and during our post-show and in our training classes that really make this community work. The more you participate, the more everyone benefits. So this is possibly the first time that I can think of that an international community of church tech people has been so accessible, and we're proud to bring it to you. So take advantage of it. Head on over to the Discord, engage with others, watch the show, enjoy the information being shared, and ask questions. Any day of the week, you'll get good and reliable information and answers. You'll also see future show agendas, links to past show recordings, and special announcements. So we're on a bi-weekly schedule now until September 16th, when we'll return to our weekly schedule. And so before we get to it, I want to thank our panelists today. We have Mark Plukas in Massachusetts, Leo Mindell in London, Michael Kyer in Seattle. We're welcoming today Jeff Widgren from Kansas, who is also the host of the AV Tech Talks, which you can find information on Facebook. Crystal Vakes, Rabbi David Paskin, and who are all in Florida. So I know that there are also a lot of people watching who are both knowledgeable and dedicated to working with worship technology. And so if you would like to contribute to the panel discussion, all you have to do is get here an hour early on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, join the pre-show conversation, stick around and join the panel. Questions and comments help steer the conversation during the show, so write them in, participate, and makes for a better show. So today, What looks like, what we're wondering is, what will services look like 6 months or a year from now? We can't know how long the COVID virus or any of its variants will impact our ability to safely congregate in person again. We can hope, but hope isn't a plan. What we can say with a very high degree of certainty is that the way our congregants will experience worship services and other events in our buildings will be different, maybe for a long time. We also know that online services can work really well. And while they may not be our preference, they may be our new reality. So on the upside, online services don't take sick days. They can't get snowed out. And guest speakers, guest ministers, they are easier to get when they aren't required to travel. So, and in order to be successful, online presentations, online services, online events have to sound good and look good and have as few technical distractions as possible. And while we'll leave the content up to the worship and music teams, we can help their on-camera presence to be engaging for both the in-person and online attendees. So how can we help you to present the highest quality services that you can? Last season, we talked about a lot of things to get live webcast programming started. The value propositions, the opportunities, the finances, the importance of a needs assessment. We spoke about how to talk to contractors. We talked about the equipment and how it goes together and works together. We talked about copyright licensing and creative content. We talked about the workflow from worship planning straight through to execution and archiving. And we've really just scratched the surface. So, community, where would you like to see the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum go from here? Should we expand our topics or narrow them? What haven't we thought about? What would you like for us to do together? Here's your opportunity to help plan our schedule. So we've prepared some polling questions in the Discord that we'll also show on screen to get the conversation started. You can step up to your microphone here and ask questions, engage in the conversation, raise your digital hand, and we'll call on you to unmute today, which is something unusual for us. So here's the first question. What topic did you find most helpful from the past season? What did we talk about that really helped you to plan your hybrid ministry equipment gear up or think about how you're going to proceed with it? Let us know that in the Discord or I'd like answers in the Discord so that we have a documentation of how we're doing and what you're thinking. But if you have something that you'd like to share with us here, you can raise your digital hand and we'll be happy to call on you. And that includes panelists.
So we have a comment from Henry Gibbons in Denton, Texas. So many things, all things video, all things re-networking and interconnections. My background is mostly audio, but here I learned so much, was his first comment.
Well, thank you, Henry. It's been a pleasure to have you with us. You participate a lot here on our show and in our audio, in Mark's audio classes. Good to see your participation.
I mean, for me, some of the points I would say is that, yeah, we went from 0 to rocket speed really fast in so many things. And it's almost like you could sit there and rewatch a lot of the shows that we did right at the beginning and recapture all the things that at the time went straight over mine and many others' heads in different areas as we caught up and learned how to mix all of the various different elements that come together in there. That was my take.
I know that I certainly learned a lot. I know that I share a lot, but I also learned a lot because, while I'm sharing, and I'm sharing from my experience for doing broadcast and radio and live shows, and conferences for so many years. Everybody's different. Every facility is different. Every church is different. Even amongst the same denomination, every church is a little bit different and has different needs. And so it's navigating through that's been very educational, very enlightening for me. David.
There's on Passover, we have the 4 children. And one of those 4 children is called the She'enu Yodea Lishol, the one who doesn't even know how to ask a question. And I think that most of my life, I find myself as a child who I don't even know the right questions to ask. And so honestly, what I've gotten the most from forums like this and others is helping me discover what questions I should be asking. I may not always get the right answers, but knowing what questions to ask and maybe equally as important, how to ask them, it's been invaluable. So I'm really grateful for that.
That's one of the things that we realized early on is that most of the people here and most of the people that I talk to at most churches, especially in the small to mid-size churches, have no experience with webcasting or broadcasting or maybe not even podcasting. And what I found really remarkable was the speed with which many churches were able to figure out and adapt to doing some virtual worship services at the beginning of COVID. And we're really fortunate that the technology today is where it is, that made it so much easier to do than it would have been just a couple of years ago, and more affordable. Michael.
One of the things that's been most helpful for me has been the way that Discord is arranged. Knowing that I can go and pick out what I need as I'm needing it has been really, really super helpful. And as I've tried to use this, I've tried to incorporate it more with what we're doing. For one reason or another, it doesn't work at our place. But for me, the way this is organized and we can get in and out of it has been invaluable.
I'd say one of the things that interrelated to this and others is how to use Zoom, and how to actually use these platforms, because I think that's really key. I think we all, and it was mentioned earlier by David earlier, that it's like, how do you ask the questions about something that you don't know what you're actually asking about, or what the features are and how it works, and having that exposure and knowledge. Having exposure to people with knowledge has been a huge thing for me.
Discovering what you don't know.
And you just made me think that this may have been there all along and I maybe just didn't find it, but the explosion of how-to knowledge and content that I've been able to access is around Zoom, and again, maybe it was always there and I wasn't looking for it, but that's been inspiring to me. I mean, I watch more. There are more people making videos about how to make videos than there probably are people making videos. But for me, that's been a gift.
One of the interesting things that's happened to me as working on the integration side of AV is and as a programming house, the educational level of so many of our customers, even though they were integrators, we run into a lot of real idiot integrators who really don't know what they're doing and shouldn't be in the business. And just in the last year, we're seeing a certain amount of intelligence coming up around really simple things. It's like, you should have known this before, but I'm happy you know it now.
Hmm. And Keith Miller from Paint Branch, Maryland says, I think the interviews with the congregations that won the needs assessment competition and the follow-on questions on the recommended equipment were valuable. These sessions put everything together. Yeah, I enjoyed those too. Those were very, very enlightening. And Jim Bailey from Casper, Wyoming says he enjoyed analog mixers. We can't afford much equipment because we have a 34-member congregation. And I got the most from those sessions surrounding analog mixers. Digital mixing, video switchers, etc., are probably out of the question for us. Certainly, the smallest congregations are going to be the most challenging.
I think this is quite an interesting one, but before I get there, Crystal's had her hand up, and I'm trying to mix, and it's hard to see with the hands at times. So, Crystal.
Fair enough. I'm just going to say I lay it all at Yellow's feet, that I have a Stream Deck XL now. So that is entirely your fault. But it is awesome, and I love it, and it has really simplified my workflow.
Cool. All right, thanks.
I would go back to that point that Jim has raised about the 34-member congregation and say, where is my bound? You know, this is the thing that always, like, I always sit there and I think where we are and where we could be, because we were always constrained by geography. And maybe to some extent we will be in the future, I don't know. But at this precise moment in time, I am X thousand miles away from most of you physically. Some people on this group will probably say I'm on another planet. But in terms of my communication and my involvement in this conversation, I am 45 milliseconds behind you or something like that, or ahead, depending which way you want to look at it. And you've just got this opportunity to just say, where are your boundaries? Where are your limits? Where's your reach? Who, you know, if we are doing what we want to do, I sort of sound like a mega church now, don't I? Where do our limits end? And it's just that to me, I think, is one of the amazing things that we have.
David.
I thank you for saying that, Leo. And I also wanted to just mention that we need to be careful about artificial limitations that we place on ourselves. Lots of synagogues last summer, as they were scrambling before the high holidays, were spending $20,000, $30,000 on setups that they didn't need to spend. You don't need $20,000, $30,000. You can, I mean, if you have it, you can get fantastic cameras and beautiful audio, great. But if you're a 34-member congregation, does anyone in your congregation have a recent iPhone? Because that's a pretty darn good camera. Let's not impose upon ourselves limitations that keep us, as Leo said, from the unbelievable possibilities that this moment presents us with.
Thank you, David. Crystal, go ahead.
I'm just going to go with the old adage, the perfect is the enemy of the good.
Mark.
Yeah, I said this in a past meeting, but and again, addressing the analog mixers thing, I've been called upon by any number of friends who are singer-songwriters, bar performers, things like that, saying, "Oh my God, my sound is just terrible, and I don't know why." And I go in, and they've got, you know, an all-in-one mixer amplifier thingy, and it's just set up wrong. And as soon as I step in and dial them in, get the EQ right, get the reverb right, get the compression, you know, just basic stuff, but walking in with knowledge of audio and what the device is capable of, I may be able to squeeze out a much better product than they were, because they never had the opportunity to really dive into it. And by the end of the evening, they're going, "Oh my God, can I just write down what you did?" And I said, "Well, if you set up like this every week, yeah, just keep the knobs the same and you should have a pretty good show." And what I found was the lesson is that it's not necessarily always the equipment. It's what you do with it and what knowledge and techniques you can apply to using it that make a huge difference. And for a 34-member congregation to use an analog mixer, I'm hoping that we demonstrated to you, Jim, that you should be able to do just fine with a few creative uses of that mixer. You should be able to do almost everything we're talking about in these shows.
Mm-hmm. Jeff?
Yeah, over the last year and a half, it's been impressive to me, the development of technology, the advancement, and as it continues as well, quite rapidly, to be able to do things remotely and so forth. I think about this technology that, we've either, come and contributed early, with our knowledge, working skill knowledge, or learned on the fly. And I think that it's kind of twofold. Some of the technology is used to reach and deliver, and some of the technology is to minimize our distractions during that delivery, right? Good sound versus bad sound, decent video versus really bad video. And that could be the camera or that could be bandwidth, right? And so, I think it's really understanding the purpose of, that piece of hardware. I mean, I support, I don't at the highest level support a very large church, but I support often, small chapels, small to us, 300, maybe 400 people, per chapel, but I oversee 11 of them. And the fact of the matter is each one of those chapels broadcasts. Now, we're a speaking church. We're not a band driven, we don't have, musicians to track and things like that. So it simplifies things, but we're a speaking church. So one mic stand, one XLR cable, an XLR splitter off the pulpit mic, an iPhone, and a converter, an iRig Pre that converts the audio signal into the iPhone or iPad. That's it. That's how we stream 11 different congregations every single Sunday. And it looks beautiful. I mean, it really does. We have our own platform to stream to, but that could be YouTube or Facebook, just the same. But the picture quality is just phenomenal. We use Lyric's broadcaster and feed that signal, and it works. It's a volunteer. The most expensive part of it's a volunteer device every Sunday. And so, there was no expense there, but the kit costs like $145. And so, the deal is it's, I often have to remind myself, because I'm a techie fool all my life, and often have to, restrain myself from wanting, budget and equipment and so forth. And remind myself it's about the message, it's truly about the message. And I think the folks who've had the hardest role are in fact our ministers and pastors and preachers, that they have, especially if they're just streaming. If they're just streaming, they have no concept. I can get a sense by looking at all of you in front of me, some body language, some expression, and so forth. And when they're simply streaming into a lens, that's a horrible place to be. And I host the Zoom Test Kitchen. I love Zoom, not because it's perfect, but it does create that opportunity for connection and to be able to can you deliver the spirit of a message? Can your audience feel the spirit of the message, and can you feel their spirit in return? I think that is really where a lot of churches either are or desire to be, or trying to figure out how do we get there, and truly appreciate. It's not temporary. I'm not saying, I'm not a prediction of, complete negativity forever. Just saying, if we're prepared with this, anytime we need it, we got it, so it's just been fascinating to me over the last year and a half, the growth and the strength. I mean, I was a video off kind of guy. I did not want to turn my camera on. And I'd say 80-90% of the people on a Zoom meeting was just like me. And so it's, most of us have busted through that and are doing much better. But anyways, it's just super impressive to me.
Indeed. Ministers are trained professional orators. They are trained to be very dynamic when they're in front of a congregation, to deliver a sermon, and they command your attention. But into a camera where they don't have that feedback, as you're saying, that's a different sort of skill that they need to adapt to, and they really need to it really benefits to have some guidance from people who are very familiar with how to act and how to present yourself on camera. And that's something that we're talking about trying to develop, maybe a program to help clergy with that kind of skill set to adapt to. But absolutely, it is more about how you get the equipment to work together to achieve your goal than the cost of that equipment. Analog mixers are great. Some people say they sound better than digital mixers, and I won't argue with that. Provided they have the right set of capabilities, which is not difficult. Many less expensive analog mixers have submixes, aux outputs, enough inputs to cover your needs. They can do the job when necessary. Digital mixers have additional features that make the job easier from week to week, so that you don't have to twiddle as many knobs and remember where they were and have paperwork, because analog mixers are not automated. They don't have motors, and you can't recall a preset. But analog mixers can certainly get the job done. We have one more comment on this poll question. Bruce McNair offers full end-to-end understanding of the process: audio, cameras, video production, lighting, streaming services, video displays, and how they all connect and work together. So this is something that he enjoyed and got a lot out of from our first season. Thank you, Bruce, for that. So let's move on to the second poll question. What topic did we not cover last season that would have helped you as you were trying to work through what you've already done? So that's poll question 2 in the Discord. And there are a couple of answers already. Rabbi David here on the panel says, I would love to have some tech tours where different size congregations can walk us through their setups. Interesting. I like that idea. And that's actually something that I'm working on. More to come on that. Henry Gibbons from Denton, Texas offers the little stuff: routers, switchers, converters, network fundamentals. What connects to what, and how, and with what? Well, okay, that's a good point.
So Mark's got his hand up on a couple of those points.
Oh, great. Okay. And all those little adapters and converters and the network stuff, that's all really important stuff to know. They are things we pull out of our tool bag when we need them. They're really handy, but they take an understanding of what they do, and you have to have them. So that's something that we can certainly talk about. Mark?
Following up on the tech tours topic, I had an interesting conversation this week with Ethan Baird of Pesky J. Nixon. He's the president of NERFA, the New England Regional Folk Alliance. And he had been talking with Jake Jacobson, who runs the Circle of Friends Coffee House. And what he was asking me was, what do you know about, I'm trying to pull how various congregations and venues have done with their streaming efforts, because NERFA wants to start engaging in, instead of their 5-day, you have to come to this location for our 5-day Folk Alliance thing, doing minis, doing virtualization, things like that. And he was in part also looking for tech tours of various venues like Circle of Friends Coffee House and things like that. We had a great conversation about this, and one of the things he's looking for is, UU churches, Catholics do bingo, UUs do coffee houses. A lot of the people here run coffee houses in their congregations, and he's actually looking for multiple congregations to host sections of NERFA, where local people will contribute to the NERFA conference, but from their venues. This made me think, wow, this is really bringing all of these, certainly the music community and the coffee house community closer along a greater geography. It's also enabling people to get together and share ideas, and it's allowing various coffee houses to show off their strengths. So I'll actually be talking more with Ethan, and I also said, he started asking about, well, what do you do about getting people to understand what they have to do? And I said, well, it so happens I'm part of this technical panel. And I said, most of what you've just asked about, we just did the work in 20 shows. And there's lots of resources and a vibrant community that are talking about these things. So I'll send you his email address, or remind me again how to invite him. He wants to join this Discord and this panel because he'd like to learn more about the musical capabilities of congregations and their streaming capabilities, as well as how does he, as the president of NERFA, go about instructing people and helping people with this whole effort.
Well, I'd love to have him. That's fascinating and sparking ideas for me as well, because here in the DC area, there are several folk and bluegrass and blues oriented nonprofit organizations that hold concerts and hold meetings and do jam sessions. And a lot of them are utilizing the spaces of our churches. And knowing which churches have better audio capabilities and even video streaming capabilities would be extremely valuable for them. And as well valuable for the churches, because that's potential rental income or community sharing space. Thanks. Bruce McNair comes back with, I agree with both of the questions, how the pieces all connect together, but especially in the context of real examples at different congregations. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else have anything on this question? And it can be somebody from our attendees. Just raise your digital hand because I can't quite see everybody at once. And you can find that in the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen. You open that up and you'll see your digital hands.
Yeah, addressing Bruce's comment about how we didn't cover how they all connect together. We did briefly, but I think so much of our focus was on the silos, this kind of mixer, that kind of mixer, cameras. We covered the individual bits and pieces, but we weren't able to do a lot when it came to dragging it all together in real pictures. And how do you do it? And you and I have talked about this, Marty. It seems next season we should be helping people, now that they've bought all their gear, well, how do you use it? How do you get the most out of it? What buttons do you press to do various things? And like he said, how does it all hook together again? Do I need NDI installed here or here? It's
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Now that people are either well on their way to having their equipment installed or have had it installed or setting it up, it's time to shift gears to actually figuring out how to operate it, and not just which buttons to push and what this button does or what that button does, but why do I want to push that button and why do I want to push this button and when? And Keith Miller from Paint Branch, Maryland says the system recommendations for the large congregation in St. Louis.
he caught us.
Yeah. So we did have an episode with the St. Louis church, and where we'd had 2 sessions with the prior 2 churches. That one was so in depth that I thought we pretty much covered everything. But we did not release the documentation on that. So that's something we can look at. I have to check out the documentation and see if we actually completed it, and then we can make that available as well.
I feel like next season maybe we should have a show, similar to Stump the Chumps follow-ups from, Car Talk, where we revisit those churches that we made recommendations to and see, so where are you now? What actually happened after we talked to you ad nauseum? What did you end up doing?
That's a great idea. I like it. All right, let's move on to our third poll question. So from where you are now, what problems do you see as your greatest obstacles to move forward? So you figured out how to get to where we are now. And so now it's time to take the next several steps forward. And what do you see as your biggest problems in doing that? So we have some answers here in the Discord. Rabbi David offers challenging folks to embrace the possibilities that digital offerings and gatherings present. So challenging folks to think forwardly, to think differently, maybe to not presume what your opportunities are, if I'm reading you right. Jeff.
Yeah, right along that that comment from Rabbi David. I was gonna throw it out there before I even saw or heard that. Is I think there. I mean, it's not just a think. I'm aware of this challenge now in some groups between the tech team, who feels quite accomplished in everything that's been learned and tweaked and tuned. Therefore, of course, they want to carry on, and just say the leadership clergy, if you will, say, nah, we'd rather just rip everybody out of their homes and get them back into the church, because the preference is to be in person. And it's the sponsorship the technical team could find itself gone, minimized, and challenged in some cases. I'm not trying to stereotype anybody, but I think that's a real reality. And I think I tend to believe that the common ground that can help that really kind of disparate conversation truly is why. Both parties have to be able to answer why. Why do you want to carry forward? Why do you want to bring them back? And do your very best to be completely transparent and honest in the responses to that why, and it'll help us, really understand, the purpose. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And it's interesting that
Marty, can you give me host back? Sorry, my connection dropped.
Oh, okay. It's interesting that the tech teams and the clergy are having this conversation where they're not really in simpatico about how to move forward or where to go from here.
I think you're going to see a year or two before the tech teams and ministry come to an understanding of the common goals for their conversation. It's brand new territory, so everybody isn't quite sure what's going to happen. You're going to have to wait to see what happens. For example, if a congregation embraces remote ministry, well, how does that affect the level of participation in things like social outreach and whatnot, where people were accustomed to gathering in a place and being in communication face to face with one another versus, casually attending versus Zoom? Does it actually have an impact? Do you find that people are more active or less active? And I think the empirical evidence is what's going to drive the coming together of the virtual versus the in-person and these two camps that Jeff was talking about. I think we've got a year or two to find out how this is all going to settle out, because we got to see how it affects people. It's very hard to predict human behavior, so we got to watch it.
So
Yeah.
I would ask: Are we to wait for the audience's response while they're in a seat that says, "Let me go click and check out that church's production, and then that church's production, and those who do it best grab my attention the most," right? I just don't tend to believe that churches should be in the broadcast business, as in just simply deliver something that's attractive and exhilarating and so forth. I tend to believe there can be a connection, a real true blue connection over Zoom, and there can be methods that if you simply like during a lesson or a sermon, a talk, it's not meant to be interactive, but I believe what we haven't done a really great job at developing is how do we gather the audience's response on how that was received and so forth. The real follow-up, like when the service is over, the work begins, some for the work, tech team, the staff and so forth. And I think those are areas that we really haven't even come close to understanding and mastering at this point.
Servicing megachurches, my mortgage does not want to agree with you about churches not being in the broadcast business, but ethically speaking, I kind of agree with you.
Yeah.
Crystal?
I would say with regard to obstacles, one of the big ones that I don't think I've really heard anybody truly address, and this is speaking as somebody who's been telecommuting for about 14 years now, is that you've got a lot of mind shift that's going to go into Zoom burnout is a topic that I've heard recently, but it's the concept that we're coming to people on a platform that they do their daily work on right now while people are still remote. So they get in their head the connection, oh, this is work, this is work, this is work, this is work, this is, oh, it's church. But you spend 40 hours a week in an unpleasant place. We've got to find a way to make that a pleasant place. And I think we need to use Zoom to leverage other things like community get-togethers, different things we can do to meet, like book clubs and what have you, make enjoyable experiences in Zoom to turn the tide and get more people who are not used to being remote into the remote mindset. And that's going to be a big part of getting into the new normal, is healthily establishing the remote mindset for people. So,
Leo?
Yeah, I just want to also remind everybody else, if you want to raise your digital hand, that's the easiest way we'll see you, because of the way Zoom on here works, I don't see you fast enough apart from, so that's why I can see Crystal, but I couldn't see others. One of the things that I missed because my connection dropped, so I don't know if this has been said, but my religion 2,000 years ago was an animal sacrificing cult that had to change its direction when the temple disappeared, and it's to now it's the same in, well, hopefully we're not going back to being an animal sacrificing cult. It depends where Rabbi David takes us, but the reality is we just got to change
No pressure,
what
Rabbi.
we're doing. Is change what we're doing, and we're just, I love what Jeff is saying. We've just got to use this technology, and it will eventually, this technology won't be in front of us. In other words, at the moment it's seen as like the whole thing is this, we're using this technology, and eventually you'll go, the technology isn't there. Books are technology, although I am now paraphrasing exactly what David has said on in the past. Books are technology, everything's technology. We're just, at the moment we think of it like the technology is the beginning, but it will just be the delivery that we will then sort of ignore. And I love what Crystal is saying. Just take it away from thinking that this is that horrible thing we use for work.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I many months ago, but during the lockdowns or shutdowns or whatnot that we all experienced at some level, I described the situation as kind of the great equalizer, and what I further describe that as is let's say years ago, my biggest superstar that I just idolized, I would have paid $1,500 for a backstage pass and the opportunity to meet them and shake their hand and have a conversation. You would have never gotten a dime out of me to get on a Zoom and pay to be able to say hi to my superstar, nor would they have shown up on a Zoom to say hi. But when there's no live audience and there's no live venue with a backstage to buy your way into, that's where I think a lot of equalization came into play, where I know people. I spoke with somebody a couple of days ago who is definitely deals with anxiety at probably the most extreme degree I've ever witnessed and been a part of, and that individual has a very recognizable name in the tech space, but has friends who I'm sure in real life would probably not. I mean, there's opportunity. There's been fantastic opportunity for, I've got a bigger circle of friends now, 18 months later, that I have never met in person. And I would absolutely call them friends, and I'm not alone in that. I think we're just all pretty darn stubborn. And it's technology, you said, Leo. So was the bicycle, so was the vehicle, so was the telephone, so was that audio calling bridge. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's always been some level of technology that has brought us together, and it's just a new generation. It's a new time, and I think we, the sooner we just all admit this will do, our spirits and minds can be fed. So that was all.
Marty, you've got Keith with his hand up as well as Crystal.
Keith, and if you can turn your camera on, Keith, we'd love to see you, and go ahead.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, a couple of things. The comments we just heard reminded me a lot of what Glenn Gould talked about 50 years ago. He was a tremendous classical pianist. He didn't like seeing people in person, but he talked on the phone constantly. And I think he would have loved seeing the internet, but he died in the early 1980s. Anyway, a couple other things just came to mind about trying to appeal to as many people as possible, both within the congregation and, trying to appeal outside the congregation. I used to give high school math talks occasionally as part of my job. And, we would always hand out evaluation forms. And it really struck me when they came back how completely opposite people's comments would be. And these were students that I think were trying to be serious in their comments. One person would say, "Oh, he was so fast, I couldn't understand anything he was saying." And someone else literally would be saying, "He repeated everything so much, it was so obvious, I wished he would get to the point." So whatever you do, some people are not going to like it. And that's really driven home to me in the last few months about people's attitudes about Zoom meetings. We have people in our congregation, including me, that are perfectly happy watching services online, meeting with our friends online. We have other people who are just completely not uninterested in it and who have not watched a service in the last year and a half. And, you're not going to please everybody. You just have to do what you can.
Yeah, we've been, people definitely want to be able to come back into the church and be with their other people, be with the community, be part of the community, be able to see each other and just get back together again. And yes, that's going to happen. And nobody's saying it shouldn't. But after a year and a half of doing online services and other events, it's pretty clear that there are certainly advantages that people want to take advantage of. We have in this room here, we have in this group, we have people registered here from 6 different continents and all over this country. That could never happen in person, right? We have churches saying that they have people from other states who are attending on a regular basis, right? So then there are personal circumstances that may not allow you to go to services on some particular week, but that doesn't mean that you should be, and having these virtual hybrid services gives you the opportunity to include them all the time, anytime. And again, they don't take snow days, it's always available, and that should be part of, I would think that it would be part of your mission and your ministry is to include as many people from outside the church, because you can, as are inside the church. So we have some other comments here that I want to get to. So Bruce McNair says, and this goes to the question, what are your obstacles, right? So we're going back to that. Finding a team of volunteers and getting them trained in the many different parts of the technology. Yes, ongoing training we do see training we see as an ongoing problem, because with the technology, it's not a one and done deal. I can show you what a steering wheel in a car does, but that doesn't teach you how to use it and when and by how much. And so there's a progression of skills that can be learned, and you can learn the basic skills, and then once you get comfortable with that, move on to more advanced skills and keep progressing. And that not helps you to operate the equipment, but it helps you to really help improve the product, improve the broadcast, improve the look, improve the sound, and it gets your church moving and advancing. So we see training as an ongoing question, and that's very important to do. Henry Gibson offers, ditto, my board is really worried about challenges, I'm assuming, worried about that. So am I. As for the tech stuff, ask me when I have a working system up and running. Okay,
It's funny
We
if
do
you
that.
if you scan down, most of the comments are about getting enough volunteers and tech people to actually do this. The gear is only part of it.
I was going to say, it sounds like what we really need to do is consider a show on automation to make it as painless as possible for as few people as possible.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'll say I've met plenty, walked in and toured plenty of systems that are far too complex. You know, just spent, you know, whether it got pieced together and ended up complex, or whether it was designed complex and it's just really more than necessary. You know,
You got a big thumbs up from Keith, and I'm sure with others there, Jeff.
Yeah, we can put ourselves, I mean, literally, you know, like if we lead that, we can put ourselves in any one of those paragraphs that talk about the difficulty of finding help. I mean, I've got one guy who I can depend on for sound, and so, you know, it's a toughie, you know, and you know, add to that, you can go buy a PTZ camera. Oh, those things, you know, people have all kinds of opinions about them. I've used them for years, or because they don't take a volunteer, I can guarantee you that. If you put a tripod-based camera that has to be manned, all of a sudden you've got a new problem. And so, you know, and really, I mean, when people finish watching the service, do they really ever say, man, I'm glad they've got a digital soundboard or a $10,000 camera? You know what I'm saying? Like, no, you know, I mean, we know that there's really awful and there's, you know, there's like good and above, but I can't stop not talking about, you know, enough's enough. It's just not about, you know, to a degree, it's not about the cost of the lens, the equipment, and so forth. I mean, if somebody, yeah, it's just, there's just so much more to be done, so much more that's important. I think you know, I'm new here, so I don't know what you guys have all talked about in the past, and thanks for the invitation, but you know, sometime if it fits tonight, is most of us are all delivering our primary service. What about the breakouts, the Sunday schools, and so forth? I don't know. I mean, I know what we asked our folks to do, and that was, hey, have one of the kids turn their iPhones on and fire up a Zoom session, because then they're doing it for their own age group, for those few that, you know, haven't decided to come back yet, and it's worked out fine. You know, it was up to us to put in good wireless, but outside of that, it's worked out really good. But I'd love to hear how people are tackling that. What about outside the primary meeting?
That is,
you know?
such a great idea, Jeff. Part of the conversation I had with about NERFA was, you know, that the industry in general is made up of old people. We're not doing anything to actively invite younger people into the world of music, technology, all of these things. And, you know, speaking from inside the industry, boy, finding qualified people is getting tougher and tougher, because no one has incentivized younger people to actually learn this stuff and do it. Handing an iPhone to a kid during a religious ed session and saying, here, you're in charge of this now, they get the bug. It's like, oh, I've now been entrusted with this, and with just a little bit more learning, they get someplace with it, and they get interested. We did an internship with a woman at Circle of Friends Coffee House because she was kind of interested in theater, and she bit the bug so hard she's now a stage manager on Broadway. Because she enjoyed the environment so much. And it's like, you know, just give them a chance, give them some responsibility, give them the opportunity to screw up and learn from their mistakes. That's how we all did it. It's like, oh, I shouldn't have done it that way, I'm not going to do it again. Well, you know, we have to accept that during a church service. Don't make it perfect. Let them make a mistake and learn from it. Give them some guidance about, you know, during that transition, if you had done this instead, it would have looked smoother at the other end. You know, be a gentle mentor, but let them learn through their mistakes. And yeah, you couldn't have a more forgiving audience than a congregation when it comes to this stuff. Take advantage of that.
That's really true. The other night I was talking to one of our leadership members, and when I broadcast, although our congregations are like 300-ish folks, when I broadcast to about 4,400 of them, which is all of them together, and prior to a year and a half ago, I was not in this business full time, but yet I had been streaming for the church for about 10 years prior to that. But I would say 6 times a year or so. It wasn't that every Sunday responsibility. But now I felt like my professional image is on the line, and because these 4,400 members are all potential customers, and on my car I have signage that says who I am and what I do, and when something goes wrong, I feel like the world is just turning towards me, even though we've all embarked upon, I call it an extremely risky adventure, because there are so many hops along the way, so many vendors along the way the moment it leaves our router, and those are all areas we don't know who to call. We don't, we don't know how they've configured it. It's really risky, and quite amazing how much data successfully, transmits, every day. But I was talking to him, and I pointed out, there's one time I came home, I was almost crying, because we were in the depths of it, just a fantastic talk, and clip all 3 of my streams, ASL, Spanish, and English, cut. And it was our primary platform had put in some new rules, and we had went overtime. We scheduled the beginning and the end in the cloud, and we had gone overtime, which had never been an issue in the past. And at 5 minutes now, our own church at the headquarters cut us off. And I'm like, wow. I just felt like the world was looking at me. And his feedback was exactly what you just shared. He says, I talked to a lot of people, and I've never, ever heard anybody mention your name during or after problems that, we've encountered on occasion. And so I think you're right. We do have a very forgiving, understandable audience.
Yeah, volunteerism and technical issues and building up to that is a thing. Volunteers, enrolling people to be volunteers can be very personal, very tricky thing to do. I think that it has to be broken down for them so that, especially for newer people, what you ask them to do has to be easy to understand and uncomplicated. And so as we talk about automation, we're talking about simplifying a complicated process and to make it easy to do. Like pushing one button will actually do 3 or 4 different things, but you don't really have to know what those 3 or 4 things are. You just have to know what the end result of that is, so that when you push the button, that happens. And what made that happen is really less important, just that happened, right?
At least at first. Eventually you want to develop your people so that they understand the chain of commands that actually goes with that Stream Deck button push, so that you can actually take maybe some time off at some point to do something and not have to program everything every week.
Right.
I know, what a weird idea.
Ah,
When we design control systems for rooms, we'll often get a customer that wants to take it to an extreme, and a million things will happen upon this happening. Oh, but in this circumstance, these sequence of things need to happen, and they'll go way down the automation path. And what we have to do is kind of rein them back in and say, listen, we can do all of that. If you can specify everything, we can make any number of things happen with the control system. But the moment someone presses a button and it doesn't do something they were expecting, whether or not it's doing the things we programmed it to do, if it doesn't do something they were expecting, they get very confused. So we say, let's dial it back a little bit. Let's simplify it. Let's also give you discrete control over every component. So if you want to abandon all of the automated stuff, you just go over onto the tech page. Now you've got everything, and you can just play with it there. So we always advocate for control systems that allow backdoors or tech pages that give you discrete control over every component should you wish to abandon all the automation aspects of it. But also, on the other side of that, we try not to stack too many things happening with a single button push, but so that people know what to expect from that button push. The button makes it very clear this will be your end result by a number of methods. And when it doesn't happen, they know what to do to get out of trouble.
Yeah, there certainly can be a rabbit hole to automation, where you try to make it so complex with one button push that it can be unreliable. And then you can't figure out what it is it was supposed to do. So, keeping it simple. But I agree, Crystal, that, you want to bring people in slowly, but then once they get bitten by the bug, as Mark was saying before, they'll want to know more. They'll want to know, well, what happens when I push that button and why? And they'll want to know, well, okay, so what does this other button do? And I see what it does, but can I make it do something different? Because I have this idea, So those are, bring them in. And you know what? Impressing upon your people that this is a really important role that you're playing for your church, because prior to COVID, the most technical thing that happened was mixing sound, which admittedly is a really cool thing to do and can be complex, but it's just for the people in the room. And that may be, anywhere from 25 to 100 or 800, depending on the size of your room.
It's also witchcraft for most people, so you don't engage many people in the presentation. They're just afraid to do it. But with video, a lot of people are way more willing to try and learn it. I don't know why, because I hate video, but, I'll stick with the audio side. But it's surprising how many people are so intimidated by the audio, they don't want to have anything to do with the tech team. But somehow video links them in, gets them interested.
Okay, Michael Kyer, you had your hand up, and then we'll move on.
In addition to the smaller chunks of the training that we're talking about, and this kind of segues into the next poll question, is when we're presenting that training, because one of the things that I found really, really, really easy to do is derail my whole, team as we're getting up to going live, because somebody has, hey, what about this side piece, and we'll jump into try and do an explanation of, okay, well, this is of that. And the next thing you know, the conversation is squirreled. I've noticed on a number of occasions that even a simple suggestion of, maybe next time we could is enough to blow apart what I'm trying to focus on. And so I really, when we're going in those, I try to stick to what's on the check sheet. I don't want to add extra, pieces to it. So easy to get extra thought processes brought in and you don't even know where they're going to come from. Somebody could have been thinking really intently about whatever piece it was earlier in the day. They're just going to go, and I've got 5 minutes and the rest of this isn't right. So that was one of the things for me. It's really how easy it can be to bring up something at the wrong time.
Yeah, and it's important for us to respond to that the right way, because that could be the best mark of your most interested person who's thinking deeper than the others. So they have this, genuine interest, but at the same time, one, take a note. Two is do recognize the time. After all the time I've been doing this, just 2 months ago when we had one of our larger broadcasts, I'm like, I allowed which I just wanted to beat myself crazy for allowing it. But I allowed myself to get so distracted that like 3 minutes before go live, I hadn't even put in like the stream keys for my 3 streams. And I really wanted to beat myself up over that. And so and it wasn't just me. I mean, the other guys had gotten, pulled away as well, because we don't have a booth that has any kind of a barrier. We set up and tear down the entire thing each time. And so we're right smack in the middle of everybody who has something to say or ask, or, hey, we're getting texted by my husband at home or my wife at home, and they're saying they're having a problem. It's like, hey, and so the next day we printed signs that night and we hung them on our tables, and we gave them a time cutoff and kind of leave us alone if it's within this time barrier. And it's tough. It's really tough. It can be our own crew, but it can also sometimes be, the members in the room as well. And time's crucial. Closer to
It is
go
important
live.
to focus.
Pressures, it's amazing.
It's a live event, and when you just have people in the sanctuary, you have a schedule, you have an order of service, and the worship leaders are expecting that certain things are going to happen in a certain order at a certain time, and any interruptions kind of breaks the spell, it breaks the arc, it breaks the flow of the service. But when you're online, any kind of interruption is magnified in it, in its effect.
Quiet in the headsets, please.
That's right.
All righty then. Moving on to the next one. So, what have you found to be unexpectedly easy over so far in your journey to
Messing things up?
Getting things easy to mess things up. All right, yeah. Let's see. We have some people here. So Rabbi David said, building relationships with others online has been very easy. All right, I like that. Bruce McNair says, trying not to do the big bang all at once, but building up our tech step by step, from pre-recorded videos to simple broadcasts with USB mics, and then the addition of our soundboard, the move to true hybrid services with a live audience, additional and better microphones, additional monitor speakers, recorded videos in the sanctuary, etc. Congregation knows that this is an ongoing experiment and has been very patient and supportive of the evolution. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Yes, that's one thing about a forgiving audience, right? I say often that a forgiving audience is not an excuse for striving for mediocrity, but as long as you are working to improve and improving your process and bringing things in slowly as you feel comfortable with them, that's making progress. And that is really what the work is all about, is making progress, even in a professional environment.
I think one of the things we discovered in these sessions, Marty, was that if you start with a good basis, expanding upon it becomes very easy. And we addressed this in several of our sessions. Listen, start with good cabling. Make sure you've got access points where you need them. And you can start plugging things in and adding to your system as you become more comfortable with it. So and I kind of took that to heart in getting our congregation up and running. It's like, what do we actually really need as our basis to get going? So I was like, I need 2 PTZ cams and a couple of computers, because I've got a digital mixing console. I've got this over here. Let me just start with the basics rather than rushing down some hallway very quickly. And I think the board members and the people involved at the church appreciated me dialing it back a little bit, because they said, okay, here's a chunk of money, go do this big proposal. And I was like, let's step back just a little bit and take an incremental approach to this, because what do we really need for day one is just this, and let's get used to that. And then I'll start introducing new aspects, and we can ramp up slowly as the comfort level and as the number of volunteers available increases.
When we first started the meeting tonight, a couple of you had said, don't know what to ask. And there's no better way to learn what to ask than experience a few Sundays, right, of streaming and struggling and being challenged, because then you know what to ask, right? And when I saw some churches go for it, oh, I've got a $30,000 budget. I mean, and there's way bigger budgets than that I've been aware of. But these big chunky budgets. Fact is, backed with money but not knowledge, which means you have to turn the project over to a professional. And so then when they're done with their work, they're gone. And what more do you know now than you knew when you hired them? And so now you have a system that you're not even intimately familiar with. And so yeah, it's hard to agree that it's a really worthwhile investment to have walk away expertise, knowledge, but at the same time you're in a church of volunteers, and so unless if a church organization can build a long-standing relationship with a consulting group like that, then that's fine. But yeah, most of the time I come across houses of worship that do need that in-house level of expertise from at least a couple of their members, and so yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and if you're fortunate enough to have those kinds of in-house resources, then doing it incrementally can work really well. But not every congregation does, and they have to hire outside help. They have to hire a consultant, a contractor, and it's really difficult to ask a contractor to do that. They want to do a job, get it all in, get it working, and turn it over. And then some contractors will offer training programs. And it's something that every customer should ask their contractor to include, is training programs, and be fairly specific about what you expect from the training programs. I can say more about some plans that I can't actually say more, but we do have some plans along those lines to make training, to offer training to more people in a more personal way. So we'll talk about that soon. Anybody else have a comment here? Crystal.
Yeah, I was going to say, I did the digital hand raise. It's just, it blends in with my background. Anyway, hey, the big things for me were, shockingly, I came in as a complete outsider. I was hired in as a contractor, and I didn't know any of these people. They just kind of said, what are we going to do? And I said, had a friend of a friend who said, hey, look, job, it fits the stuff you can do. And I said, okay, cool. Because I come from gaming. And it's been really, as far as unexpectedly easy, I think, slipping into this role, for one. Watching the community get behind me has been amazing. That I am so thankful to the community of my church. They're awesome people. And it's made me decide to become part of that community too. But the other thing is just people getting really excited and buying into some of the crazy half-baked ideas I come in with, because I'm not a church person, because I'm like, hey, let's do this and let's do this. And like the first time I heard the music for the church, I lost my video. I have no idea what happened. All right, my video is freaking out. I apologize for that. Anyway,
technical glitches, they never happen.
No, they never happen at all. I have no idea what just happened. Anyway, whatever. But the big deal is that they've bought in. And when I first came in, the music was basically our music director playing piano, and then the singer holding an iPad in one hand and singing into another iPad on the other, playing the piano piece from one iPad, singing. Yeah, it was rough. And then we started doing mix downs and everything else. And it's really, blown up. So I really just want to say Unexpectedly Easy has just been able to gather the knowledge through groups like this, but also having the backing of an amazing community. So that's my big one. Now I'm going to go fix my camera.
All right. And right along those lines, Henry Gibbons from Denton, Texas offers that getting support from the congregation, the board, and funding from our local UU Congregations Association. I'm glad that you were able to get that done. That's wonderful. And Paul G offers having Zoom add integrated captioning was an easy way to reduce the complexity of running a service. Perfect. Yes, Zoom has come a long way. We're really happy with a lot of the improvements that they've made. They've been really responsive to the marketplace, and they've responded to a lot of different angles of the marketplace. So we're thinking it's a great service. So the next poll question is, what kind of training would you like to take if you could? And would you like it to be in person or online? So what kind of training would be most valuable for you? And let's take online is from Rabbi David. And Bruce McNair says both. Online videos are a great way to start, but a live interactive session is necessary when I'm deep enough into the issues to ask deeper questions. All right. Personally, I think that when you have your equipment in, having an in-person professional to sit with you and your team and your equipment to go through the processes of a service to figure out how to make it do certain things that you want it to be able to do that you can't quite figure out or isn't quite working well enough for you. I think that in-person opportunity is invaluable. There are a lot of things that we can accomplish online. We can demonstrate equipment, we can demonstrate processes and techniques. But when it comes to hands-on stuff, having it in person, I think, and is really valuable. So we have a couple of other votes for online. Online and how to do the programming from Grant. And Jim Bailey prefers online. Well, that's great to know. That's great to know. We can certainly do online. And, we can even possibly do both. An in-person that is then interactively webcast. All right. Anybody else?
There's lots of different learners, right? There's hands-on, there's listeners, there's visuals, and then you go online and there's people who will slow it down to half. They'll speed it up to 1.5, right? And some will keep it at the normal speed, right? And so it gives us the opportunity to rewind, bounce it back 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And thank goodness, because if I was the teacher, that would be, hey, can you say that again? Hey, can you say that again? Hey, and so it's one of those things, and it's a forever lasting lesson, right? But I'm an online warm up kind of guy, and then I like to solidify things with then warm up, practice my own hands-on, find the existing struggles, and then go solidify something. Not that somebody has to come in, because I prefer being able to find an expert. I don't care where they live around the world, but I can bring them to me virtually, and walk around with my iPhone or iPad or whatnot, show them what I'm talking about, whatever the case may be. But I usually really kind of not finalize, but sum up my expertise, if you will, in some new area with an expert, at my side. So, but I think everybody's a bit different. They favor, One thing I used to read a long time ago, I used to read those big old books, but I don't read.
I still get
anymore.
trade magazines, that I read during breakfast. I read the newspaper and magazines during breakfast and lunch.
Yeah.
Keith agrees with online and in person. They help in different ways. We'll need training in most of the video aspects and in how to figure out the whole process. All right. And Grant wants to know, does in-person mean on premises or at a remote location? If on premises, that's great. Yeah, it could be either, actually, whatever suits you best. If you have your integrator or somebody else that you might find in your community come in and to your premises and help train you on your equipment, that's perfect. It's personal. It's yours. It helps you to develop the skills and the talents and the techniques for your particular application. On the other hand, maybe you'll go visit another facility, another venue, and look at their equipment and figure out and have them explain how they do things. And that's an interesting opportunity because that helps you learn to do different things. They may have be doing something that you thought, hey, I didn't think of that. That sounds great. I could use that, right? And vice versa. So that all plays into the training opportunities that I'm thinking about. And working
I've been,
with,
Marty, I've been
analysts
trying to
on.
think about how do I give someone a backstage pass to a show, so that maybe I wear a headset in a little Zoom call and there's a camera just watching, and we start with, unlocking the doors, rolling out the equipment, setting up the stands and the mics, and I'll make comments now and then. Here's what I'm doing. Here's why I'm aligning the channels this way. Here's why I'm here's why I'm hiding the cables the way I am. This is why the speakers are in this location. And basically, you get to be in the headsets of a show from beginning to end, from opening the doors to locking them up again. Here's why we coil our cables this way to put them away, and why we hang them on this rack, and, give somebody, as well as making some comments during the show. Here's why we EQ'd it this way. Here's why he's doing this with the reverb right now. Doing kind of a running commentary during a show. I've been trying to figure out how to actually make that work.
That sounds like the VIP Tech Experience ticket.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Some of us here did that with Mad in the Kitchen, right? It was a double production, really. There was a real production, but they did a lot of extra things to have this kind of behind. I mean, some of us would jump into a Zoom meeting, and there were, 3 to 6 different return feeds. One would be, it was a kitchen show, so one would be each kitchen, one would be, this guy at the camera,
down shot of the stove. Yeah.
The other one was the multi-view, the return multi-view, and then you would tap into one of those comm channels and just hear it. You weren't allowed to talk, and nor were they there for you, because that just adds load to your already loaded environment. But the exposure is just phenomenal. But it does take extra setup and connectivity and so forth. But it's an awesome experience. There's no question. I think what's weighing on my mind, I guess, just to share is if it was as easy as doing it in a day, everybody would be doing it, learning it in a day. So just change your expectations. If you think you're going to hire a consultant for a day to figure out your board or figure out mixing or figure out video or whatnot, it's just not going to happen. And I mean, that's just, being committed to, even this study, even online, right? You're going to go back, you're going to go back, you're going to go back, be multi-lessons. I mean, it's just, if it were that simple, we wouldn't be here sharing with one another.
I touched my first sound system in 1970, and I still consider myself a dilettante. So much to learn. You're right. You can't just learn it in a day.
But I haven't met a friendlier community either that love to teach and love to share. It's not a terribly secretive environment, culture, if you will. And,
it used to be that the way to get into the business of broadcasting or film production or sound production was as an apprentice. You come out of school, and you get the opportunity to stand back and watch, and eventually talk to people who are actually doing the work. And then you might get an opportunity to help, right? And, by being there and watching and observing and absorbing everything that's going on,
Yep.
you get to learn this way. This is the way you get to learn. And you're not learning just one particular function or one particular job. You're seeing everything that's going on and how it all ties together.
Well, and there's, I think the best apprenticeships, in this forum is, some of us do it professionally and then swallow hard or not, depending on who you are and how much of a testimony you've got, go do it for free for church, and so, but the thing is, in my case, the whole reason I could even embark upon it professionally is because I had been doing it for like 10 years for the church, but, that was very incremental, over all those years. And so, but that volunteerism, but it never stops. Like you said, it never stops on the learning piece. I mean, I literally, what's today, Thursday? I made a call like 2 days ago to another guy who owns a production company in town and just said, hey, the next several days on my calendar are not nearly as full as I'd like them to be. Call me. I'll volunteer, or if you've got real work, I'll do that too. But he does a lot more studio work than I do. And so that exposure, I'm in Kansas, but I often reach out to a production company that's set up in South Dakota and offer the same thing. And that's been kind of a 50-50 thing. But, we just all have to go kind of insert ourselves into environments that we wish to learn more about or become more proficient at, and nobody tells you no, especially if you're willing to volunteer.
Right?
Sometimes they'll say keep your hands off everything, and that's fine, but the exposure is great.
Yeah. So Steve Schlesinger said he'd like to hear a discussion of video cable types and how the choice relates to the choice of cameras and video switchers. So we did do a couple of episodes on that. You can find them if you look in the Discord, and even in the weekly email, I list the topics for every week. So you can go back and see some of that, but you can ask specific questions on the Discord if you have them. And Keith is saying someone just mentioned a little while ago using an iRig Pro signal converter. I've heard about those from musician friends. Is that a direct injection box?
I think I mentioned that. So what we were using it for, and there's a lot of different iRig devices. Often is the case, one end of the two, the input and the output side of an iRig is going to plug into a mobile device. That's commonly the destination. The question is what's your intake? Is it an unbalanced cable from a guitar or a keyboard that you want to do some recording and do multi-track into your iPad or whatnot? Or in our case, we were pulling a XLR cable off of a microphone or off of a Y adapter off of a microphone. We need to convert that XLR input to the TRRS 3.5 millimeter plug-in into the mobile device, and so it just really depends on what your intention is and what you're converting. The one I mentioned was an iRig PRE, which is XLR to 3.5.
All right. So we have one more question to get to. If you could choose a time and day, when would you be most likely to watch the show? Or to watch it live? So let's see what we have here. Rabbi David says, late on a weekday afternoon. And Henry Gibbons would like most any time. Retirement is great. I highly recommend it.
Jeff, is that the iRig you're talking about?
Ah, there we go.
So
Oh, yeah,
that's the iRig 2, which its expected input is like a guitar or keyboard, an unbalanced mono cable looking cable into a mobile device. The one that I used was called an iRig, and then the letters PRE, and its input, instead of being a 1/4 inch, is an XLR input into a mobile device. And
For a microphone versus a line level.
correct. Yep. Yeah, and the PRE actually can, if you want it to, with it has a 9-volt battery, where that iRig 2 that you have doesn't have a battery at all. It just routes, but the PRE can actually provide phantom power for the microphone if you need that.
Given that its name is PRE, I assume there's some controls to adjust gain. It's implying that it's a preamp.
Yeah, exactly. So it has a 3-way switch, so it's off or it's on, just to pad. Like our pulpit mic is already powered, so we go to the first switch, which is just simply on, so the signal will pass, and then the third position is actually passing it, but also providing power to the microphone, and then it does have a gain dial on it as well.
Okay.
All right. So if we were to change our time from Thursday evening on the East Coast to another time, what would be a good time and day for everybody? So I know that Thursday is a popular day for like choir rehearsals in preparation for Sunday, and a number of people have said that that's not optimal for them. So what day would it be? How about Sunday evening, for example? What would be a good day? So we're looking for input on that. Michael Kyer says not Sunday. Okay.
No, Sundays are always stacked between morning service, and then a lot of our committees go Sunday afternoon.
Oh.
And so Sunday is just my main work day of the week, and it's volunteer. So Sundays is just far too stacked for me.
That's unusual. Sunday committee meetings were always verboten for me. It's with Zoom, this was particularly difficult just because we were like, we can do it, and so they jump on. So we're kind of dealing with that, but Sundays are just busy. And Keith, no, I would not schedule this show before 10 a.m. on any day. No worries there.
The only problem for me, obviously, is 10 a.m. is the afternoon, and 6:30 p.m. is near enough. I don't know what it is. Middle of the night. I mean, it's already the middle of the night for me. It's just.
So historically, it would be, I'd say, I always like to keep things fresh. The assumption would be this get together might appreciate, but I don't know the answer to that because I haven't been here historically, to have everybody's ideas, struggles, and successes happened yesterday. And so like a Monday night, while everything's fresh, whether you're feeling good or bad, it's all fresh. And because we know, time kind of, we just get busy with a lot of other things, and we may forget or whatnot. And I'd rather do it on the recovery side of an event versus toss any new ideas out to somebody to go run with for an event tomorrow. Because that injection is not a good habit. But it's evenings. Evenings are weekday evenings work well.
All right. Well, our attendees can continue to offer suggestions in the Discord whenever they come to you. Can be later, can be tomorrow, can be at 3 a.m. if you so choose. That's the beauty. Do any of our panelists have any other questions that can help us figure out how to program better for next season.
Hi, I'm back.
Hey, hi.
Yeah, I've never had it crash so hard it took out the driver. That was fun.
Oh.
Yeah, woo! My question would be, does anybody have any lingering questions on copyright, rights management, things like that? Creative Commons, public domain, stuff that's kind of under my jam. So if you have any questions on that, I'm curious.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know. I'm making my first note for the night. name to it. My running rule and practice and answer to people asking about copyright is understand it, respect it, and don't try to beat it. You know, I mean, just have enough respect not to try to beat it, and instead of streaming it publicly, keep it in a private meeting. It's another advantage of Zoom, you know. And but there's still copyright that still has to be, you know, adhered to even in a private meeting at times as well. So, but yeah,
and beat it, we did. We beat it to death here. All the copywriting issues. I learned more from those sessions on copywriting than I had in a long time about anything. It was really kind of remarkable.
Wasn't that? I mean, that was a
We did two really good shows on copywriting. One was with guests from CCLI and CCS. And in addition to that, Crystal did two wonderful shows on Creative Commons and other free and low-cost content resources.
Cool.
Yeah, but I've also specifically been diving deep into copyright. And I actually now have, as of this week, licenses from CCS, CCLI, and one license. So I'm fully cleared across the board, and I feel like I can talk about all of those platforms now.
So, I mean, can I be the opposition just in question?
Sure.
Is how much of that knowledge, and I'm not devaluing or valuing the knowledge, because it's super to have, but I haven't found any level of knowledge that conquers the algorithms that we have very little control over on YouTube and Facebook, for instance, the ones that make mistakes constantly. And that seems to be that threshold point that, you know, it's going to be a risk. It doesn't matter, you know, how much compliance, how much money you spend, how much whitelisting you do that's formal and the whole bit. If their algorithm decides to kick you, you're going to get kicked. And I don't know. I mean, I'd love to hear back, you know, from, you know, yourself and others that say, you know, yeah, I used to think that way too, but we've really figured it out. Or simply, you're right, that risk is always going to be there, you know.
I'm trying to find an image on my computer that I took the other day, and I believe it's called Suck It, Warner. So give me a moment.
Yeah, apparently there's copyright law, which in itself is extremely complex. But that seems to be baseline for the platform rules.
Platforms have their own issues. I mean, that's kind of the problem. The DMCA covers them insofar as if they are housing copyrighted materials. That's the whole point of the DMCA. It keeps them out of the legal loop. But when they are the platform that displays the work, then the lines get murky, and that's why they start to throw at you. Like I said, I really want to find this image. But long story short, I did manage to not only dispute, but have Warner retract a copyright claim on me. And I've every copyright claim I have fought on Facebook, I have successfully conquered. There is not one that is currently on me.
And Leo, you've had some episodes with YouTube, haven't you?
I have had episodes with YouTube, but a lot of the times it's about reading what the notification has been. Very rarely have I had live taken down. But, you know, a lot of times they'll always mark things, and they'll tell you cannot monetize, but that doesn't mean to say it can't be successfully watched. Although one of the things I did notice, you may or may not have seen, on office hours this week, they decided to show a few clips from the Olympics. It got taken down and removed completely. You know, so it's not just music. It's, in fact, if anything, TV clips are even higher. You think you'll play a bit of a cartoon or a bit of a funny from something, and you'll get taken out.
Yeah.
So I want to ask if anybody from our attendees, any of our attendees, have any questions about programming, about what they would like to see, anything related to the poll questions or anything similar before we end the show and go into the post show. All right, so I don't see any hands. I'm looking, going once, going twice.
I will say I'd just like to continue learning. That's kind of my jam. So.
Yes, go ahead.
Got it just under the wire.
Yeah, hi.
I like that idea of just having discussions about the programming, because I'm very cognizant of that. We don't want to over automate things, but we want to go ahead and make things as easy as possible for the few volunteers that we can have, and as a way to bring more in. So if we can find ways to program either Stream Deck, which we don't yet have, or OBS, which we're just starting to play with, or other automation tools that I think I've heard mentioned but don't remember, that would be really helpful for us. Also, I am definitely interested. I'm going to actually go back and actually watch for the first time some of those previous discussions about copyright, because that is something that we are trying to be very cognizant of.
Well, I will toss this out. If you have questions on copyright, I'm in Discord a lot. Feel free to ping me. I'm either on as obviously the name in the server, or just Panda Kaizen, which you can see if you right click my name and you'll get my profile.
Thanks, Kizzle.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank our panelists and our guests and you for such a wonderful conversation. We hope that you've all enjoyed our time together. Perhaps you found it informative, enlightening, enriching, energizing, and motivating. Watch the Discord for agendas for upcoming shows and where you can find recordings of the past shows to review, announcements, and upcoming events. And and this is all new ground that most of us are exploring for the very first time, all with new possibilities and very few prior models at this scale to emulate. So make it your own, reinvent your ministry, think bigger about your communities, who you can reach and how you can reach them. Dare to dream. The Discord is always open. We'll see you there, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. And now our service continues.